ID selectors are very similar to class selectors. So similar, in fact, that many people get them confused. Class selectors, as we've seen, target the class attribute. ID selectors, on the other hand, target the ID attribute. Unlike class selectors, which can be used as many times on a page as you need, ID selectors can only be used once per page. That stems from the fact that each ID on a page must be unique. This is one of the reasons that people use IDs to typically identify areas of content. You will probably only have, for example, one header, one footer, that sort of thing. Now, it could seem like ID selectors are less powerful than class selectors due to the fact that they can only be used once per page, but that's actually wrong. ID selectors are much more powerful than class selectors and will overwrite the class selectors if their styles conflict with each other. This is a concept called specificity, and it basically says that the most specific rule wins in the event of a conflict. Since there can be only one element with an ID of header, for example, ID selectors tend to be very, very specific. So here we have ID underscore selectors from the 0610 folder open. And I want to talk about some of the structure that we have existing on the page already. So I'm just going to go ahead and switch to split screen view. And I notice when I place my cursor into this area, I see a little dotted line around it. Now, typically, that means that this is a div tag. If I select that in my code, I can see that we have a div, and it has an ID of top. Well, we also have another div tag down here at the bottom, and it has an ID of, you guessed it, bottom. So we have an ID of top and an ID of bottom. And we can use those ID attributes to write ID selectors that are going to style those particular areas. And we can take advantage of those ID attributes by writing ID selectors that are going to style those regions on our page. I'll switch back to design view, go over to my CSS styles panel, and go ahead and click to create a new CSS rule. Now again, this time we need to choose our selector type. I'm going to grab the pull down menu and I'm going to choose ID. Now if you remembered from our class selectors need to be preceded by a period. Well, IDs need to be preceded by a character as well, but they need to be preceded by the hash mark. That's also called an octothorpe character, but I prefer hash mark. So I'm just going to type in pound or hash mark or octothorpe, whatever you want to call it, that character, and then the word top. So that's how we write an ID selector to target that particular area on the page, pound top. Now remember, we're going to define it in this document only, and I'll go ahead and click OK. Now, because the ID attribute top is applied to a div tag, any styling we do here is going to affect the entire div tag and some of the content inside of it. So first thing I'm going to do is switch to my background category, and I'm going to give this div tag a background color. I'm going to type in pound CC9. Now, because our div tag already has the ID attribute applied to it, if you wanted to see what that was going to look like, you could go right down here to this apply button and click. You can see the background color show up within that div tag. So it's kind of nice that you can preview these before you commit to them. Now, I'm also going to go to my box category, and for padding, I'm going to leave same for all checked, and I'm going to type in 10 pixels. Now, if you notice, if you click apply, padding basically gives you a little bit of cushion between the edge of the element and the content inside of it. So that creates a more of a box look to this, and the text isn't butting up right against the edge of the div tag. We can also set a width here, and I'm going to set the width of this div tag to 450 pixels. It's going to shorten it a little bit, and again, make this look more like a little box. Now I'm going to go to my border category, and for my border, I'm going to choose this style, width, and color, same for all. I'm going to go ahead and do a style of solid, a width of 1 pixel, and for color, I'm going to type in pound 600, which if you remember is that burgundy color. I'll go ahead and click OK, and that finishes the styling of that region. If I switch over to live view so we can see this a little bit better, you can see that the div tag now is smaller in size because we gave it a fixed width. We give it a border all the way around it, a background color, and some padding to keep the text away from it. This is a really good way to create sidebars or call-out tags or things like that. I'm going to turn live view off, and now let's go ahead and create the selector for the bottom div tag. So again, I'm going to create a new CSS rule. I'm going to do an ID selector, and the ID selector is going to be named pound bottom, and we're going to define it in this document only. Remember, there's no space between the pound symbol and the name, so pound bottom. Go ahead and click OK. And here we're going to make some changes that are a little bit more specific than the changes we made above us. First off, we're going to change the font family to Arial. We're going to change the foreground color to pound FFF, which is white. Then we're going to go to our background, change the background color to pound 666, which is that dark gray. And then we're also going to give it width and padding as well. I'm going to go to my box properties, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a width of 450 pixels and give it a padding of 10, just like we did before. Now, if I click Apply, I can preview what this is going to look like, and I can click OK. Now, notice that we have a slightly different change here. Do you see how our paragraphs went from being Times New Roman to Arial? That's because they are now inheriting that font value not from the body tag, which is further up the document tree, but now from this div tag, which is much closer to them and has a higher degree of specificity. So we've styled two distinct regions using the power of ID selectors. Note how the specificity overrode some of the existing styling and how inheritance cascaded the formatting down into the child elements. In this case, the Arial font is a good example of that. These are both extremely important concepts to understand as you begin writing your own CSS.